War Council asked if humans were engineered for war. Space Marines said, "Your species aren't? If you are not a heretic, then declare your city of origin. Leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the Emperor's Glory. At the conclusion, rate this tale from 0 to 10. The Emperor protects." The plasma bolt missed Commander Theiss's head by mere inches, scorching the chitinous wall behind him. Around the War Council chamber, 12 different species flinched as one, except for the human. Space Marine Sergeant Korath didn't even blink. The 7-foot giant in crimson power armor simply turned his helmeted gaze toward the smoking hole in the wall, then back to the tactical display. Reptilian snipers. Third one today. "How can you be so calm?" chittered High Admiral Vexia, her crystalline carapace shimmering with stress patterns. The Kritak commander's compound eyes darted between every shadow in the chamber. "They've been hunting our leadership for weeks!" "Because they missed," Korath stated matter-of-factly. His voice carried the mechanical rasp of his Vox unit, emotionless as a servitor. "Serious, dead enemies cannot improve their aim." General Rusk, whose ursine features were matted with nervous sweat, gestured at the holographic display showing their dire tactical situation. "Sergeant, with respect, we've lost 17 outposts in 4 days. The hegemony's advance seems unstoppable. My best strategists calculate we have 72 hours before complete encirclement." "Acceptable time frame," Korath replied. "The Emperor protects." Around the table, alien eyes, surprised, widened. These words, spoken with such casual certainty, made no tactical sense. Commander Theiss, whose elegant feline features bore the scars of countless battles, leaned forward on the polished surface. "Sergeant, I've studied human military doctrine. Your species has a remarkable service record, but mathematics is mathematics. The reptilian hegemony has superior numbers, advanced cloaking technology, and orbital supremacy. How exactly does your Emperor factor into this equation?" For the first time, Korath's helmet turned to face him directly. Even through the red-lensed optics, something predatory gleamed. "You assume survival requires favorable odds." The chamber fell, fearful, except for the distant rumble of artillery. High Counselor Zephyr, whose avian frame trembled with barely contained anxiety, spread his iridescent wings in a gesture of confusion. "But surely your people must have some strategic advantage we're unaware of? Some hidden weapon or tactical breakthrough?" "We are the weapon." The simplicity of this statement hung in the recycled air like a death sentence. Ambassador Coralin of the Aquatic Depths Dwellers rippled through several color changes, the equivalent of nervous laughter. "Sergeant, I mean no disrespect, but individual prowess, however impressive, cannot overcome fundamental strategic disadvantages. Even your enhanced physiology has limits." Korath's massive gauntlets rested on the table's edge. Each finger could crush bone, yet they moved with gentle, surprising gentleness as he manipulated the holographic display. Red enemy positions outnumbered blue allied forces by nearly 10 to 1. "You study war as mathematics," he said, zooming in on a contested sector. "Logistics, supply lines, casualty ratios. Your species calculate acceptable losses and strategic withdrawals." His head tilted slightly. "These are foreign concepts." Captain Veltar of the Canine Pack Hunters, whose loyalty scent had been growing increasingly agitated, finally voiced what others feared to ask. "What do you mean, foreign concepts?" "Acceptable losses, strategic withdrawal, surrender." Each word fell like a hammer blow. We were not engineered with these parameters. The War Council exchanged glances. This was the second time the human had mentioned engineering, but his meaning remained cryptic. Commander Thies had encountered humans before. Their reputation as formidable allies was well established, but something in Korath's tone suggested depths they hadn't fathomed. "Engineered?" High Admiral Vexha's voice carried the harmonic undertones of deep concern. "Are you saying your species was artificially created for warfare?" Korath was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of 10,000 years of history. "You are all products of evolution, natural selection. Your worlds shaped you for survival, to flee when threatened, to preserve your species above all else. This is wisdom." The massive Space Marine stood, his bulk casting shadows across the holographic battlefield. Humanity evolved on a death world where everything sought to kill us, but that is not what made us weapons. Outside, the enemy bombardment intensified. Through the reinforced windows, they could see plasma streaks lighting the darkening sky. Each impact shook the command bunker. Yet, Korath remained perfectly still, a crimson pillar of tranquility amid chaos. "Then what did?" whispered Counselor Zephyr, his voice barely audible above the rumbling explosions. Korath's helmet turned toward the sound of battle, and for a moment, something almost resembling satisfaction colored his words. "We made ourselves into weapons, deliberately, willingly." The implications struck the alien commanders like a physical blow. Around the table, ears flattened, wings folded, and stress sense filled the air. Even battle-hardened veterans like Thies felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bunker's temperature controls. "That's horrifying." General Rusk struggled for words. "That's human." A proximity alarm began wailing. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in rotating red. And the tactical display erupted with new contact signatures, hundreds of them, moving with the coordinated precision of hegemony assault troops. The final attack had begun. As chaos erupted around the War Council, shouted orders, scrambling aids, the fearful taste of fear sweat in recycled air, Sergeant Korath remained motionless. His crimson armor reflected the warning lights like spilled blood. Finally, he reached up and disengaged his helmet seals with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. When he lifted it away, the aliens saw a human face for the first time. It was younger than expected, though surgical scars crisscrossed pale skin like a roadmap of violence. Dark hair was cropped short in military fashion, but it was the eyes that fearful hearts, not brown or blue or green, but a pale gray that seemed to look through them into some mysterious battlefield. When Sergeant Korath smiled, it was not reassuring. It was the expression of a predator sighting prey. "Gentlemen, ladies, the enemy has finally arrived." The tactical display flickered as the assembled War Council absorbed the Space Marines' casual revelation. Commander Veltar's antennae twitched nervously as she processed what Brother Sergeant Thaddeus had just implied, that his species was literally bred for warfare. "Surely you exaggerate," chirped Scholar Kethris, his colorful feathers ruffling with academic skepticism. "No species could survive such aggressive specialization." Thaddeus tilted his massive helm slightly. "Brother, we come from a world where the trees eat you, the rain is acidic, and our ancestors hunted megafauna with sharpened sticks. Terra made us hard before the Emperor made us harder." Captain Shasui Mian of the Tau delegation leaned forward, her blue skin pale with concern. "This explains much about your combat doctrine. Your species treats warfare as natural?" "As natural as breathing," came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Sister Superior Celestine strode in, her power armor humming softly, bolt pistol mag-locked to her thigh. "Apologies for the delay. The heretics required purging." The assembled Xenos shifted uncomfortably as she took her position beside the Space Marine. Where Thaddeus was a mountain of ceramite and controlled violence, Sister Celestine radiated an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate with barely contained faith. "How many?" Thaddeus asked without turning. 43 confirmed kills. Brother Maximus is still counting his," she replied, pulling off her helm to reveal scarred features and eyes that burned with zealous fire. "The Emperor's will was emphatic today." Ambassador Quiron of the Felinian Confederacy, a lithe figure with golden fur and predator's instincts, couldn't suppress a shudder. His species were apex hunters on their homeworld, but these humans spoke of slaughter like others discussed the weather. "You enjoy this?" he asked, trying to understand. Sister Celestine fixed him with those burning eyes. "Enjoy? No, honored Xenos. We do not fight for pleasure. We fight because it is our duty, our calling, our very purpose in the Emperor's grand design. Every heretic purged, every Xenos threat eliminated, every demon banished, these are prayers made manifest." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of machinery. General Thrak of the Ursine Coalition, a massive bear-like creature whose own species valued strength above all, found himself reassessing these humans entirely. "Your casualties in the last engagement, 90% losses, yet your survivors showed no signs of breaking." "Breaking?" Commissar Vex had arrived, his long coat still bearing scorch marks from the battlefield. His agnetic eye whirred as it focused on the general. "Why would we break? The Emperor protects those who serve faithfully. Death in his service is the highest honor a human can achieve." Tech Adept Zeta 7 clanked into the chamber, half his body replaced with blessed machinery. Sacred oils leaked from recent repairs as he interfaced with the tactical cogitator. Combat efficiency rates confirm human behavioral patterns deviate from standard xenobiology by approximately 847%. Fascinating specimens. "Specimens?" Thaddeus's voice carried a warning note. "Apologies, honored battle brother. Fascinating exemplars of the Omnissiah's design." Zeta 7 corrected quickly. Even the Mechanicus knew better than to irritate an Astartes. Captain Mien studied her tactical display, confusion evident in her body language. "Your species operates on principles that should result in rapid extinction. Suicidal charges, refusal to retreat, acceptance of catastrophic casualties. Yet you continue to expand across the galaxy." "Because we adapt," came yet another voice. Rogue trader Cassius Meridian swept into the chamber, his ornate power armor bearing the scars of 1,000 battlefields and the wealth of successful ventures. Every world we settle makes us stronger. Every enemy we face teaches us new ways to kill. The Xenos delegation exchanged glances filled with a mixture of admiration and growing terror. These humans weren't just warriors. They were a civilization built entirely around the concept of fearful war. "The High Fleet approaches," announced Commander Veltar, trying to regain control of the increasingly disturbing conversation. "Preliminary scans suggest bioform diversity exceeding previous encounters. Intelligence indicates adaptive evolution in response to our defensive strategies." Tech Adept Zeta-7's mechadodendrites writhed as he processed incoming data. Confirmed, tyrannic organisms show 34% variance from established patterns. The Great Devourer learns. Sister Celestine smiled, and, fearful, several aliens stepped back instinctively. Good. The Emperor's enemies should provide proper challenges. Good? Scholar, Kethras's voice cracked. "These creatures will devour entire ecosystems. My homeworld's population centers." "Will be defended," Thaddeus interrupted. "The Emperor's angels of death do not yield ground to Xeno's filth." Commissar Vex activated the strategic display, showing fleet positions across 3 star systems. Preliminary deployment places guard regiments on worlds Tertius, Secundus, and Prime. Estimated survival rates range from 12 to 37%, depending on tyrannic adaptation speed. "Acceptable losses," he continued matter-of-factly, causing several delegates to recoil. "The Emperor's faithful serve regardless of odds." Ambassador Quiran's claws extended involuntarily. "Disgusted. Those are sentient beings you're discussing. Billions of lives." "Disgusted. Yes," Sister Celestine said simply. "Lives that will be given meaning through service to humanity's cause. What greater purpose could they serve?" The philosophical divide between human and Xenos thinking became a chasm in that moment. Where the aliens saw tragedy, the humans saw opportunity for glorious sacrifice. Rogue Trader Meridian activated his personal hololith, displaying fleet positions. "My vessels are moving to intercept the Hive Fleet scouting organisms. Initial contact in 47 hours. "Your ships against a Tyrannid advance? That's suicide!" General Thrax's voice carried disbelief. Meridian's scarred face split into a predator's grin. "That's Tuesday. The Emperor has blessed my house with 12 generations of impossible victories. This will be the 13th. Tech Adept Zeta-7 suddenly froze, his optical mechadendrites focusing on something beyond the chamber. "Alert! Vox transmission incoming. Source, deep space. Tyrannic biosignature detected." The chamber's speakers crackled to life with an inhuman shriek that bypassed rational thought and struck directly at primal fear centers. Several Xenos delegates stumbled, overwhelmed by the psychic pressure of the hive mind's attention. The humans remained perfectly still. When the transmission ended, Sister Celestine was already loading a fresh clip into her bolt pistol. "The Great Devourer speaks. How quaint." "You felt that psychic pressure?" Commander Veltar gasped, her natural telepathic abilities leaving her particularly vulnerable to the hive mind's touch. "How are you not affected?" Commissar Vex's augmetic eye glowed red in the chamber's lighting. "We've heard worse. The warp whispers to us constantly, trying to corrupt, to break, to turn us from the Emperor's light. We've built our souls into fortresses against such things." Brother Sergeant Thaddeus stepped to the chamber's primary display, his massive form casting shadows across the tactical projections. The enemy reveals itself. Good, now we can kill it properly. The assembled Xenos found themselves caught between terror and fascination as they watched these humans prepare for what should have been certain doom with the casual efficiency of routine maintenance. The fleet positions here, Thaddeus continued, indicating the largest concentration of Tyranid bioships. Standard Hive Fleet doctrine suggests they'll establish consumption zones on agricultural worlds first, building biomass before engaging military targets. Unless we give them a more tempting target, Sister Celestine added, her smile becoming something that would have made demons pause. The realization hit the Xenos delegates simultaneously. These humans weren't planning to defend. They were planning to attack against a hive fleet with worse odds than any sane species would accept. And they were genuinely excited about it. The War Council chamber fell silent as Captain Thaddeus of the Crimson Fists examined the tactical display. The hologram showed a nightmare scenario. 3 hive fleets converging on the Kythara system, their bioships already beginning to strip the outer worlds bare. Commander Shas El-Mien of the Tau Firecast studied the same data with growing horror. Impossible odds, chittered Ambassador Vex-High, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. The Kroot delegation shifted uneasily, their avian features betraying concern. Even the normally stoic Eldar Farseer Alaitiel seemed troubled by the projections. "According to our calculations, we need to evacuate the remaining populations immediately. The greater good demands we preserve what lives we can." Captain Thaddeus turned, his massive power armor whirring softly. "Evacuation?" His voice carried the weight of centuries through his voxgrill. "Brother Captain, surely you jest." The Tau commander blinked in confusion. "Jest? These are 30 billion Tyranid organisms. Our combined forces number perhaps 50,000 effective combatants. Mathematical certainty indicates—" "Mathematics," interrupted Commissar Helena Voss, her black coat pristine despite days of fighting, "never accounted for faith." Her bolt pistol gleamed at her hip. "The Emperor protects." Ambassador Vex-High's compound eyes focused on the humans with growing bewilderment. His species had encountered Tyranids before, entire sectors consumed, civilizations reduced to scattered molecular dust. "Honored allies, you speak of combat against the Great Devourer as if it were routine?" "Because it is," replied Captain Thaddeus simply. "We've faced these Xenos before. Macragge, Ichar 4, Tarsus Ultra. They bleed, they die." The Eldar Farseer stirred, her psychic hood crackling with barely contained energy. "Monkey, your species' capacity for self-deception astounds even me. I have seen the skein of fate. This world becomes a dead husk within 3 solar cycles." Sister Superior Magdalena stepped forward, her power armor decorated with sacred parchments and purity seals. "Then we change fate, witch!" Her flamer pilot light flickered ominously. "The Emperor's will shapes reality, not Eldar sorcery." Mayenne, desperate, gestured frantically at the hologram. "Please, understand reason. Each hive ship contains millions of bioforms. They adapt to every strategy, consume every resource. Logic demands strategic withdrawal to fight another day." "Fight another day?" Colonel Castine of the Valhallan Ice Warriors laughed, a harsh sound that made the aliens fearful step back. Tau, you don't understand. For us, there is no other day. This is the day. This is the place. Here we stand. The chamber temperature seemed to drop as the human officers aligned their positions. Their alien allies watched in surprised fascination and growing horror as something mysterious awakened in their partner's demeanor. "Your species weren't engineered for war?" Captain Thaddeus asked, surprised, genuine curiosity in his synthetic voice. "How do you survive?" Vex-High's wings buzzed in distress. We negotiate, trade, seek diplomatic solutions. When forced to conflict, we use minimal force, preserve resources, maintain population stability. "Fascinating," murmured Tech Priest Kellyan, his mechanical tendrils writhing with interest. "Inefficient, but fascinating." The Kroot Shaper Kajul spoke in his guttural voice. "Kroot fight when hunt demands, take strength from worthy prey. But this is not hunt. This is extinction. For you, maybe." Commissar Voss checked her chronometer. "For us, it's Tuesday. Colonel, status report." Colonel Castaigne consulted his data slate. 15th Valhallan ready for deployment. Morale is high. The troops are excited about facing new Xenos. Sister Superior Magdalena's Celestians are conducting morning prayers. Captain Thaddeus has positioned his Marines at critical defense points. "Excited?" Mien's voice cracked. "Your soldiers are excited about facing certain death?" "They're excited about dying for the Emperor," Voss corrected. "There's a difference. Death in his service is the highest honor." Farseer Alaitil's gem eyes narrowed. "You speak of death as mortals speak of celebration. This is why your species disturbs the warp itself. Your psychic emanations are wrong." Sister Superior Magdalena's voice rose slightly. "Wrong? We are his chosen warriors, witch. Our faith burns brighter than your dying civilization's fear." The hologram updated, showing the first Tyranid scout organisms penetrating the system's outer edge. Bioships the size of continents drifted through space, their hulls pulsing with organic life. Smaller creatures swarmed around them like antibodies. "Combat deployment in 6 hours," announced Captain Thaddeus. "Brother Sergeant Marcus, prepare the assault squads. Commissar Voss, ensure the guard understands their duty." "Wait!" Mien stepped forward. "You cannot simply charge at them. These creatures adapt instantly to weapons fire. They learn from every engagement. They will overwhelm you through sheer biomass." "Overwhelm us?" Tech Priest Kellyan's optical macadendrites focused on the Tau. "Impossible." "The Omnisia grants knowledge. Knowledge is power. We shall adapt faster than they can evolve." Kajul's beak clicked ominously. "Human friends speak of impossible victory. Kroot respects strength, but this is not strength. This is madness." "Madness?" Colonel Castaigne drew his chainsword, its motor purring to life. "Son, madness is what we do best. The Valhallan 597th has never retreated, never surrendered. We won't start now." Vex-High's wings spread in agitation. "But the numbers, the sheer impossibility. How do you function as a species believing you can overcome mathematical certainty?" "Because we've done it before," replied Commissar Voss simply. "Sirius, Vrax, Armageddon, Cadia, against Chaos, Orcs, Dark Eldar. The galaxy keeps throwing impossible odds at humanity. We keep winning." The Eldar Farseer stepped closer, her psychic abilities probing the human's emotional emanations. What she found there made her recoil in shock. By Isha's tears, you're not lying. You genuinely believe victory is possible. More than believe, you know it. Of course we know it, said Sister Superior Magdalena. The Emperor protects his faithful. Our deaths feed his divine will. Win or lose, we serve. Mien's auxiliary systems began calculating frantically. This makes no evolutionary sense. Species that throw themselves into impossible situations should have gone extinct millennia ago. Should have, agreed Captain Thaddeus. Didn't. Want to know why? The chamber fell silent as all alien attention focused on the Space Marine. Because Terra is hell. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The aliens exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping across their features. Explain, whispered Farseer Alaitiel. Tech Priest Kellyan's vox grill crackled. Terra, gravity 1.0 standard. Atmospheric composition 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, trace gases. Appears habitable. Analysis incorrect. Colonel Castine grinned, showing teeth like a predator. 38,000 years ago, our ancestors survived ice ages that should have killed everything larger than bacteria. Supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed 90% of the population. Every predator on Terra, continued Commissar Voss, was engineered by evolution to kill humans specifically. Bears that weigh 800 kilograms, cats with fangs like daggers, serpents with venom that stops hearts in seconds. Sister Superior Magdalena's voice rose in a hymnal cadence. Our oceans boil with creatures that devour flesh in minutes. Our skies rain death from above. Our very air carries diseases that can end civilizations. And we didn't just survive, Captain Thaddeus concluded. We conquered it all. Every beast, every plague, every natural disaster. We turned it into our advantage. Terra didn't make us strong. Terra made us unbreakable. The display updated again. The first wave of tyrannid organisms had entered the system proper, their bioships releasing clouds of spores that would terraform entire worlds into feeding grounds. Vexhi's voice was barely a whisper. You came from a death world? No wonder you're all insane. Insane? Commissar Voss laughed. Friend, you haven't seen insane yet. The chamber doors burst open as a new figure entered, Inquisitor Corax, his black armor wreathed in shadows and purity seals. His presence made even the Space Marine bow slightly. Forgive the interruption. His voice carried absolute authority. I bring word from the Ordo Xenos. The Tyrannid Fleet designation is Hive Fleet Moloch. They consumed the Octarius sector 3 years ago. A collective, fearful gasp rose from the alien contingent. Octarius had been a battleground between orcs and tyrannids for decades, billions of the galaxy's most vicious fighters locked in eternal combat. Consumed? The entire sector? Mien's voice was hollow. Every world, every biomass, every fighting organism. Inquisitor Corax's helm turned toward the aliens. They've evolved specifically to counter orc brutality and regeneration.
Kajul's feathers ruffled in desperate distress.
Then all hope is lost. If they defeated the beast orcs. Lost? Inquisitor Corax tilted his head. My dear Xenos, you misunderstand. This is perfect! The silence stretched for heartbeats before Captain Thaddeus began to chuckle, a sound like grinding metal that somehow conveyed happy satisfaction. Of course, the Space Marine said, sarcastic. They've adapted to fight orcs. Green-skinned, brutish, straightforward fighters who rely on overwhelming numbers and brute force. Sister Superior Magdalena's hymnal voice rose in something approaching joy. But we are not orcs. No, agreed Colonel Castine, his grin widening. We're much worse. The alien contingent stared in growing horror as comprehension dawned. The humans weren't just planning to fight the Tyranids, they were planning to win. And from their expressions, they meant it. The ground beneath their feet trembled as another orbital bombardment struck the northern defensive line. Admiral Thixara watched through the tactical display as red warning lights painted their dire situation in stark detail. 37% of their forces remained operational. The Drakthi swarm had penetrated 3 defensive sectors, and their bioships continued spawning endless waves of combat forms. The human reinforcements have arrived, reported Communications Officer Villani, her crystalline carapace flickering with nervous bioluminescence. But, Admiral, it's only one ship. Thixara's 4 arms gestured in desperate frustration. One ship against a Drakthi hive fleet? She'd requested an entire battle group from the Terran Imperium. Perhaps the translation protocols had malfunctioned. The communication array crackled to life. This is Battle Barge Righteous Fury of the Crimson Fist Space Marine Chapter. We are deploying immediately. Emperor protects. Wait! Thixara activated the transmitter. Desperate, human vessel, we appreciate your arrival, but our tactical analysis indicates you carry perhaps 100 warriors. We face 1,000,000 Drakthi combat forms. Surely you should coordinate with our remaining forces before... The transmission cut off. Through the observation deck's reinforced transparasteel, Thixara watched drop pods streak through the atmosphere like energetic meteoric hammers of judgment. Each pod left a trail of fire that seemed to burn with unnatural fury. Captain Veltara of the Feline Concordat approached, her spotted fur matted with sweat and combat residue. Admiral, the humans are deploying directly into Sector 7. That's where we lost contact with the 47th Talon Squadron. It's overrun with bioforms. They'll be slaughtered. Before Thixara could respond, their tactical display exploded with new contacts. Red enemy markers were disappearing at an impossible rate throughout Sector 7. The Drakthi swarm, which had been advancing like an unstoppable tide, suddenly seemed to be retreating? This cannot be accurate, muttered Chief Science Officer Horthak, his bovine features creased in confusion. 100 warriors cannot eliminate 10,000 bioforms in minutes. The mathematics do not support this outcome. But the sensors didn't lie. Where moments before there had been solid red marking enemy concentrations, now there were only scattered dots, and those were fleeing toward their bioships with what could only be described as panic. A new voice crackled through their communications, deep, resonant, utterly calm, despite the chaos. This is Captain Valerius of the Crimson Fist's 3rd Company. Sector 7 is cleansed, deploying to support your northern lines. For the Emperor. How? Thixara whispered. Then, louder, Captain Valerius, how did you eliminate such overwhelming numbers so quickly? There was a pause. Then, "We charged them. They died. Is this not how warfare is conducted?" Through the tactical display, she watched as the handful of human signatures advanced towards Sector 4, where 2 full hive nodes were attempting to establish a beachhead. The Keth Coalition's third wing had been trying to dislodge them for 6 hours with minimal success. Captain Veltara's communication device chimed. It was her wing commander, Captain Mereth. "Veltara, you need to see this. The humans. Emperor's blood. I've never seen anything like it." The main display shifted to battlefield footage. Through the smoke and chaos of war, massive figures in crimson power armor advanced with measured steps. Bolter fire thundered like the drums of judgment, each shot removing chunks of chitin and biomass from the Drakthi warriors. But what surprised, stunned the assembled alien commanders was the humans' absolute fearlessness. A biotitan, standing 30 meters tall with scything talons capable of bisecting a main battle tank, charged toward the human formation. Instead of seeking cover or calling for heavy weapons support, the Space Marines charged back. "Are they insane?" breathed Science Officer Horthak. The lead human, Captain Valerius, judging by the ornate skull-faced helmet, leaped directly at the biotitan. His chainsword roared to life, teeth spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute. As the alien creature brought its massive talon down in a killing blow, the human simply caught it. 30 tons of chitin and muscle stopped dead by human hands. Then he began cutting. The chainsword carved through bio-armor like it was soft flesh, spraying acidic ichor in every direction. The acid that had dissolved 3 layers of Concordat battle steel on contact seemed to simply evaporate when it struck the human's armor. Within moments, the biotitan was collapsing, its nervous system severed. "Impossible," muttered Communications Officer Villani. "The kinetic energy alone should have pulverized him. How did he survive the acid? How did he generate sufficient force to look at their formation?" Interrupted Tactical Officer Kelvar, his canine features alert with predatory focus. "They don't take cover. They don't fall back. They just advance, always advancing." And it was true. Through every camera feed, every sensor reading, the pattern was identical. The humans moved forward. When they encountered overwhelming resistance, they charged. When they took casualties, and somehow they rarely seemed to, the survivors simply continued forward with the confident, same mechanical determination. A priority transmission arrived from the surface. It was General Corton of the Ursine Defense Corps. "Command, I don't understand what I'm witnessing down here. My casualties are at 60%. We've been fighting for 8 hours. These humans, they deployed 30 minutes ago, and they're already past our forward positions. They're advancing faster than we can retreat." The display showed the truth of his words. While the various alien coalition forces held defensive positions and conducted fighting withdrawals, the 100 Space Marines were spearheading directly toward the largest hive node concentration. Their battle line was a crimson arrow pointed at the heart of enemy resistance. "Captain Valerius," Admiral Thixara opened a channel, "your forces are advancing beyond our support envelope. You'll be cut off and surrounded." "Affirmative. That is the intent." "But that's strategically unsound. You'll be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Another pause. Then, "Good. Target-rich environment. The Emperor provides."
Through the sensors, they watched as the Space Marines reached the primary hive node, a sprawling biostructure the size of a city district, pulsing with alien malevolence and spawning new warrior forms by the minute. The combined coalition fleet had been preparing for a week-long siege to reduce this position. The humans walked up to it and knocked on the door. What followed defied every tactical manual ever written. The Space Marines didn't conduct siege warfare, they conducted extermination. Bolter fire punched through bioarchitecture like it was paper. Chainswords carved through support struts with mechanical precision. And when resistance became too concentrated, they simply switched to close combat. Close combat? Against thousands of clawing, acid-spitting, genetically perfect killing machines. And the humans were winning. "Admiral," called sensor technician Rixel, his reptilian voice tight with confusion. "I'm detecting massive biosignatures fleeing the hive node. The Drakthi they're abandoning their position." It was unprecedented. The Drakthi were a hive-mind swarm species. They knew no fear, no retreat, no concept of individual survival. They fought until the last warrior was destroyed, always. It was their fundamental nature. But they were running from the humans. Captain Veltara's communication device activated again. This time it was Captain Valerius himself. "Coalition Command, we have neutralized the primary hive node, advancing to secondary positions. Recommend you consolidate defensive lines behind our advance. We will cleanse this world." "Captain," Admiral Thexara interjected, "you've achieved the impossible already. Perhaps you should consolidate your position and..." "Surprised? Negative. We do not consolidate. We advance. The Emperor demands purity, and we shall deliver it." As they watched, the 100 Space Marines reorganized into combat squads and began advancing toward the remaining hive nodes simultaneously. Not sequentially, not with careful tactical coordination. All at once, against multiple targets, spreading their already impossibly small force even thinner. And it was working. Science Officer Horthak was frantically calculating on multiple data pads. The energy expenditure is impossible. The reaction times exceed known biological limits. The structural integrity required to survive those impacts should require synthetic enhancement far beyond our technological capabilities. "They're not synthetic," observed Medical Officer Yalara, her aquatic features rippling with surprised bioluminescent confusion. "I'm reading organic signatures, modified, certainly, but fundamentally biological. How do they generate such power output from organic tissue?" The answer came from an unexpected source, through the communication array. "They heard something that, fearful, chilled them more than any alien threat. The humans were singing. It wasn't a war chant. It wasn't a battle cry. It was a hymn, resonant and beautiful, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. 100 voices raised in perfect harmony while they systematically exterminated an entire alien species." "That settles it," whispered Captain Veltara. "They're not just warriors. They're something else entirely." 3 hours later, it was over. The sensor displays showed no active Drakthi signatures planetside. The bioships were fleeing to the outer system at maximum velocity, abandoning their ground forces and hive nodes, surprised in recorded Drakthi behavior. Captain Valerius's voice crackled through the comm. "Coalition Command, the world is cleansed. The Emperor's justice has been delivered. We are returning to orbit." Admiral Thexara stared at the tactical display. 100 humans had accomplished what her entire coalition fleet, 50,000 warriors, advanced technology, overwhelming firepower, had failed to achieve in 2 months of warfare. Captain Valerius, I must ask, are your people engineered specifically for warfare? Your capabilities exceed all rational parameters. The communication channel fell silent for long moments. Then, in a tone of genuine confusion, "Your species are not?" The question hung in the air like a revelation. Admiral Thexara looked around at her diverse command crew, representatives of a dozen spacefaring civilizations, each evolved for different environments and survival strategies. "We are evolved for survival, Captain. Hunting, gathering, cooperation, tool use, basic biological imperatives." Curious. Humanity evolved on Terra, a death world of constant warfare. Every creature capable of killing every other creature. Every weather pattern potentially lethal. Gravity that would crush most species. We survived by becoming superior predators. We assumed this was normal. Science Officer Horthak dropped his datapad. "Your entire species evolved under constant combat pressure? For millions of years, yes. Then we developed civilization and began warfare against ourselves for 10,000 additional years. We have been at war for our species' entire existence. This is our natural state." The implications hit the assembled officers like a physical blow. Surprised, humans weren't warriors despite their biology. They were warriors because of it. They hadn't developed superior combat capabilities. They'd evolved them through millions of years of constant life-or-death conflict. "Captain," Admiral Thexara said carefully, "in your experience, how do other species typically conduct warfare?" "We assumed they conducted it as we do, until victory or death. Today was illuminating. Your forces are competent, but lack commitment. You retreat when casualties reach acceptable thresholds, rather than advancing until the enemy is destroyed. This is puzzling." Captain Veltara laughed, a sound somewhere between admiration and horror. "We retreat to preserve our forces for future battles. Basic survival strategy." "Ah, we do not retreat. We die or we win. There is no alternative acceptable to the Emperor." Medical Officer Yalara spoke up. "But surely your species must have some survival instinct. Some preservation protocols?" "Our survival instinct is to destroy threats completely rather than flee from them. We learned on Terra that threats not destroyed will return stronger. Better to face them now while we still draw breath." The communication channel carried the sound of heavy footsteps and mechanical systems as the Space Marines boarded their transport vehicles. Captain Valerius continued, "We are confused by your earlier statement about our nature being exceptional. To us, your species appear to lack fundamental survival capabilities. How do you exist in a hostile universe without the will to destroy your enemies utterly?" Admiral Thexara found herself struggling to answer. How did they explain that most species viewed survival and preservation as paramount? That warfare was a tool of diplomacy, not an end unto itself? That victory was typically defined as achieving objectives rather than complete annihilation of the enemy? "We negotiate, Captain. We find compromise solutions. We establish territories and respect boundaries." "And when your enemies refuse negotiation?" The question hung unanswered. Because for most species, failure of diplomacy meant accepting defeat or fleeing to fight another day. The concept of absolute commitment to victory regardless of cost was alien to their thinking. Today, we learned something valuable. We learned that humanity's approach to warfare is not universal. We also learned that our methods are effective against species that have not evolved our particular advantages. Through the viewports, they could see the massive battle barge Righteous Fury maneuvering away from the planet. Scarred, battle-worn, but utterly triumphant. "Captain," Admiral Thixara called. "Will your chapter remain in this sector? There are other threatened systems." "Negative. We have received word of a Black Crusade in the Gothic sector. 13 companies of traitor Marines require cleansing. We estimate 67% casualties acceptable for mission success." 67% casualties? Acceptable? For one battle? Science Officer Horthak whispered. "They consider 2/3 losses acceptable for a single engagement?" Captain Valerius seemed to hear him across the communication channel. "If the alternative is failure, yes. The Emperor protects, but victory requires sacrifice. Always." As the human vessel accelerated toward the system's edge and its jump point, it left behind a world scoured clean of alien corruption and a coalition of species fundamentally changed by what they had witnessed.
"Admiral," Communications Officer Villani said quietly, "I believe we need to revise our threat assessment protocols." "How so?" "We rate species by technological capability, population size, territorial expansion, military doctrine, but we never considered evolutionary pressure. We never asked what shaped them into what they are." Captain Veltara nodded slowly. "Humanity isn't just another spacefaring civilization. They're apex predators who developed technology. And they're allied with us." Admiral Thixara watched the human ship disappear into the warp, leaving only the lingering echo of that hymn in her memory. "Beautiful, terrible, absolutely implacable. Update the Alliance protocols," she ordered. "Human forces are to be given complete tactical autonomy. Do not attempt to direct them. Do not question their methods. Simply ensure they consider you allied rather than enemy." "And if they ask for support?" asked Tactical Officer Kelvar. "Give them whatever they request immediately, because if humanity ever decides we are enemies rather than allies—" She looked at the tactical display showing a world cleansed of life in mere hours by 100 warriors. "I do not believe the galaxy contains sufficient firepower to stop them." In the depths of space, the Righteous Fury translated into the warp, carrying its cargo of humanity's finest toward their confident, next impossible victory. Behind them, they left a coalition of species with a new understanding of their place in the galaxy, and hopeful, profound gratitude that humanity's legendary fury was directed outward, toward the enemies of civilization, rather than toward them. The war continued, as it always had and always would. But now, the galaxy's defenders knew they had allies who had spent millions of years perfecting the art of absolute victory. In a universe where only war was certain, they had found the perfect warriors. And those warriors considered them friends. The Emperor, they reflected, truly did protect.